Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Let's get transitioned over. There we go. All right. Um, hey. Nobody expects Abralores until he shows up. Welcome to the stream, man. Thank you. And TVD Gamer, it's been a while. Thank you for showing up, man. Good to see you. I'm just making some final adjustments to dependencies, and then we're gonna see what I broke before the stream. Um, so there is something to go over with regards to NX. And from the reading I did this week, it sounds like this only affects users of NX on Windows. It sounds like they've managed to fix things a bit, but um, the issue you'll run into is if you try to migrate to the latest from anything before 21.5.3, when they run the provenance check, the way they're checking the file system for the provenance files and things like that doesn't work on Windows. And they have a fix in, but the fix is in 21.5.3 and not 21.5.2. The way to get around it is they've added this environment variable nx skip provenance check. So if you run into this error, you can actually turn on the skip provenance check, which is what you can see me trying to figure out here. Like, how do I access environment variables, and how do I only set them for a certain amount of time? But you can see after I do that, then I can easily upgrade to 21.5.3, and everything was fine from that point on. So yeah, that's a part to be aware of. Oh, you don't have to apologize, TV Gamer. If you've got time, you've got time. Everybody's got a busy life. I just appreciate it when you're here. Um, Hyperinflation Macklemore be like, but shh, that was $99. Oh, Thrift Shop, man, that's a good song. Um, did I tell you what happened? You did not tell me what happened, man. Um, so let's see here. Let's get all of this stuff staged. So we upgraded the CDK. So we upgraded a bunch of stuff, looks like. So we'll just say, hey, we upgraded dependencies. Commit that, push. And then let's see if we can actually serve. Let's see what we broke. I changed jobs, as I told you recently. My company kept me on 2 different projects for 2 different clients, and they paid me double for 1 month. Going forward, only 1 job. That's sweet. Getting paid double for a month is, I mean, for what you were going through, I think that was well deserved and well earned, being paid. Um, hey, what's up, Ole? They needed to pay you double. Um, so I think that was awesome, man. Way to go. All right, so it looks like we haven't broken anything. Um, it looks like everything is working as intended. Um, so we're getting our errors here. Yeah. So there were a couple of things that we wanted to do. So the track by issue here is because of how we're handling the errors. But we're at least getting our errors in place. Let's quit that for right now because I don't need it. But as we look, our form is now behaving as we would expect it to. We're getting the errors and things like that. That's where we ended up last time. This makes me happy that we didn't break anything. Working two jobs is funny. If you can handle it, I would want two jobs. Man, so between streaming and my full-time job, I don't know how anybody would do two full-time jobs. Like my streaming isn't even a full-time job, but there's a lot of work involved. I can't imagine what it's like having two actual full-time jobs. Although there are those people who are using AI to do like 5 or 6 jobs, right, and making crazy amounts of money doing it. Um, I'm just one of those people who's so nervous. I'd be like, they're gonna find out. They're gonna find out. They're gonna find out. Um, so I don't think that I could do it. But uh, the people that can, I'm impressed. Um, well, and actually, the interesting thing is when I started working at my current company, in my contract it says I can't work another job, um, and that I have to. Um, so I have to tell them about any form of outside things that I'm doing. So I have to tell them that I'm a GDE. I have to tell them about my streaming. I have to tell them right about anything I'm doing outside of the company. Um, so I couldn't do multiple jobs, but um, totally respect those that can. Um, so I did want to go over again the Gemini Code Assist stuff. I really like the summary of changes that it came up with. Um, right where it talks about how we updated things. It picked up that we got rid of zoneless. We went zoneless, so it picked up that we did the zoneless change detection. I also liked this form validation for the to-do component now leverages Zod schemas. The validation logic and model definition. This is really good. I like this. This is like a high level thing I would send to one of my managers to be like, hey, this is what I did. um, and so very, very cool. You can't mow your aunt's lawn. Yeah, can't even pick up a quarter from the ground. Exactly, Michael. I can't without disclosing it to the company. Um, that's actually good. I need to remember that one, Michael. I hadn't even thought about it that way. Um, but anyway, I did like the code review, and this is one thing. So I was on the Angular Plus Show podcast. I don't know when the editing is going to be done or things like that. So I'm not sure when it's going to air yet. But the topic of our discussion was AI and AI burnout. And Brian Love was there, so really good guy to have there, right? He's working on Hash Brown with Mike Ryan. We had Jay Bell there and Brooke Avery. It was a really, really good panel to be discussing what we discussed. They're very, very insightful, and asked some great questions and just had some great comments. It was a lot of fun. One of the things though that I brought up is, hey, you should be turning on AI to help review your code if you're the only one working in the repo. And the reason I think that is honestly these Gemini code reviews have been so good, and they've helped catch some things that I don't want to double down on. So sometimes, in the what do we want to say? Like as we're trying to be more and more entertaining, maybe, or some I don't know. Sometimes I'll skip some stuff, or I won't remember some stuff, or it's been a while. But I did some things that the Gemini Code Assist called me out rightly for. The first thing it called me out was something that I was planning to look into today. But it says, hey, your Zod validation is a good improvement. However, we should provide user-friendly custom error messages, right? And the name field, like well, it's actually saying that the user-friendly messages from the previous implementation have been lost. Also, the description field is now only validated for minimum length, not explicitly for being non-empty. So they brought up some good stuff here. So I want to bring these in because this is right. There are a couple of ways in Zod to do error messages, and so you can see here you can use the error message like it says from shorthand to provide the custom error message. So if we go, I haven't even opened up Upstorm yet. Even if you don't let the Gemini review make any real code suggestions, it's good at seeing if comments or JS docs get out of sync. And that's another good good call out, Michael. But really, the thing that I love about these suggestions is that it's keeping me honest. And when you're a solo dev on a solo project, having something or someone who can take a look at your code and validate it is going to be way more helpful to you then it's going to keep you, because as humans we tend to get into these patterns and rhythms and our brain reinforces them, and so as you're working by yourself you may not notice that you're getting into patterns that could be detrimental to the project. Having something that's like, hey, you did something wrong here is extremely helpful. And that's why I suggest, just turn on an AI code review. The Gemini Code Assist is free. And I believe GitHub's Copilot stuff might be free too now. I don't remember it. I haven't used it for code reviews. I've been using the Gemini Code Assist for my code and stuff like that. I've been enjoying that. I may have to check out Copilot again because Copilot has improved. And like Claude, I just can't. I don't write enough code to make it worth my while to invest in another AI coding assistant. Claude is probably the best one out there I've heard, but I don't want to invest in another AI coding assistant. So there's my wife trying to get my puppy out of my room. You can go ahead and shut it. My dog, she has we've got a chair in the corner of my office and she's claiming. Okay. So that works. And then the error message we want here is please provide a name for your task. Great. Perfect. And then here, the error message we want will be, and this is a little bit difficult to see. But yeah, name must be at least 3 characters long, right? And the reason we're doing this is the one thing that I've learned over the years of working with developers and engineers is that we're really, really good at creating error messages that are good for developers and engineers. Right? One of the errors that you might see here is task can't be null or undefined, right? This doesn't mean anything to somebody who's not a programmer. To a programmer, this error message means a lot. Sorry, I said task, but name, can't be empty, right? things like this don't, these are error messages that make a lot of sense to the developers involved, but they don't make sense to anybody else. That's not necessarily true, but they aren't helpful. As you work on forms and as you work with users, you need to consider proper error messages. And one thing about a proper error message is the error message shouldn't just communicate what the error is, but it should tell them how to solve the issue, right? So here, here is we can change this from min 0 to say non-negative. That's another validation that Zod gives us. And we can say, with this, we can say, why did I change that to the ID must be a number? Again, please provide a number for the ID. And here we can say, please provide a positive number for the ID. And then the last one we can say is, please provide a number between 0 and 999 for the ID. So there we go. So now we've given much more friendly errors for that. The other thing we should do here is, well, that one's fine. If they don't provide a string, we can worry about it later. But here we can say, hey, we want non-empty. And we can say, please provide a description. Perfect. And here we can say, please, let's see what it wants to provide for us. Yeah, with at least 10 characters. Perfect. And so this will make our error messages much better. Is it my internet? Or are you dropping every so often? I don't know. Let me know, you guys, if I'm dropping every so often. Let me take a look at YouTube. It says YouTube is not receiving enough video. Oh. Not saying no data. That's weird. It looks, I'm looking at my bit rate that was sent. My bit rate just completely dropped. My stream keeps disconnecting today, it says. And so it's having to disconnect and reconnect. I'm gonna have to probably talk to my ISP. This is not good. Let me look at my. So I'm sending a good bit rate right now. I'm not disconnecting right now. I have to keep an eye on that. That's not good. I apologize. I'll need to work with my ISP to figure out what's going on here. With my last ISP, I remember I had to make some changes. One thing, I don't know. We'll have to see what's going on. I do know that with the new fiber provider I've got, that they might be providing dynamic IPs for my router, and I may need to get a static IP so that I don't keep dropping. I'll have to call and figure that out. But thank you for bringing that to my attention, Michael. This is the first time I've experienced this, and it's actually a little bit frustrating. So hopefully it's not something that lasts for the entire stream. I apologize. No, it's definitely not your internet, and I'm watching the values here. I'm also looking at YouTube. So interesting. So it looks like we're okay right now. But YouTube is complaining that I'm not sending enough video right now. But it often makes that complaint. Twitch is showing that I'm streaming at 6,000 bps, bits per second, or kilobit kbps, kilobits per second. Hey Marcus, welcome to the stream, man. Anyway, we'll press forward. Anyway, we'll press forward. Anyway. You get hyper you get hyper aware of the way you speak when you speak in front of others. And I'm just making fun of myself right now. All right, so we've added in our new error messages. Here, if we wipe that out, so now we can see, hey, we've got a please provide a name for your task, and please provide a name with at least 3 characters. So at least 3 characters solves that issue. Here, please provide a description. So now we're getting, we're getting good error messages. So if I wipe this out, yeah, there we go. This one, if we don't have anything in it, it's not complaining. So we also want this one to be a number, but we also want it to be so we can say this one is non-optional. No, we can't say that. We say non-optional here. Does that work? No. Because right now it's empty. It's not optional. It's empty. So So the number is non-negative. It's got a max, but we want it to be I think the issue here is that coerces it to a 0. We'll come back to that one. Two Claude instances. No. With two jobs, are you referring to Abradores? He's working two employments. So not two Claude instances. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. I'm not too concerned because this really won't be provided by the user in the future. So we'll worry about it later. Anyway, that takes care of the first thing that it said, hey, we should provide better errors and better messages. The next one, let's commit what we've got. And the next one I really want to get into because I worried about doing it and I got called out for it by the code reviewer. So provided friendly error messages and better validation. So we fixed that up, and this will be very beneficial as we go forward. But the next piece that I really want to take a look at is this piece here. Using so Gemini is calling me out. I used any because of the issue. So we couldn't grab the error.message. We had to grab it off of the issue and then the message. And $any is kind of, it's like throwing any on your TypeScript, right? So as soon as you start using $any in your template, you're basically telling Angular, stop type checking this. I know what I'm doing. And that's not the right way to handle this. The better way to handle this is, and it's telling us this can hide potential bugs. The error object structure changes. It makes the code harder to maintain. Both good callouts. A more type-safe approach is to create a helper method on your component to safely access the error message. This makes the template cleaner. For example, you could add this to your to-do class, right? And so now it's saying get error message, error comes in as unknown, and we give back a string. And so it's typing this, the Zod error is typecasting it. I don't like this typecast, and I actually don't like this. So this suggestion is actually better than what I've done, but it's not as good as it could be. One of the things that I have a problem with here is that we're putting logic into the to-do class. So for the component, we're putting logic into the component, which basically means that any other component that we want to use Zod for validation, we are going to have to add a method similar to this to every component. Up from slapping an any on something. And this one is actually kind of messy because it's saying, hey, issue could be not there, message could be not there. Basically, we're saying, hey, error could have this structure, but not necessarily. And so then we're using, the optional access, or if it comes back as null, we're going to say invalid value. There's problems here too, because the issue may not exist and the message may not exist for something that validates properly, right? So this is an issue. We're going to create a pipe. So let's go create that pipe. So right now, under our source file, we've got our components and we've got our models. We're going to add a new folder, a new directory. We're going to call this our pipes. And inside of our pipe, we're going to get a new, actually, we're going to use NX to do this. And here we're going to generate a pipe. So we're going to use the Angular pipe. And we're going to show all options. The path to the pipe. So it's going in pipes right now. That's perfect. So this is going to be our Zod error pipe. So you'll see down here that it's trying to create stuff. So it goes into source pipes, Zod error pipe. Perfect. That's where we want it. The pipe symbol name. So here it's just going to be a Zod error. Perfect. The file name, we aren't doing modules. We aren't going to export. We aren't going to skip tests. It is a standalone pipe. File will be named, oh, interesting. It uses dashes for Angular 20 plus or dots. That's very interesting. So you can see here that it's a Zod-error-pipe. If we change this, it's going to go to Zod-error.pipe. I'm going to leave it as a default because it's going to follow the community standards. Just having nothing in there is going to be the default. So we'll follow the community standards here. We're going to tell it to go ahead and generate our pipe for us. So great. Now we've got our pipe. And we're one step closer where we want to be. Let's go ahead and open up our pipe. And here, this is our Zod error pipe. So we can see it's going to be Zod error. That's fine. That'll be fine for a pipe. So the value is unknown, the args are unknown, and it's going to return unknown. Right now we're returning null. Not great. The first thing we can do is we can say, hey, we're going to return string or undefined. So right off the bat, this is going to be bad. We can tell this to be, hey, return undefined. And this is on purpose because undefined is going to be what we want to return if there's no error. The other thing we've got is we've got value in args. For right now, we don't need args, so we can go ahead and get rid of these. The value is coming in as unknown. This is, if we go take a look at our to-do here, we want to use our pipe here. The type of our error is a validation error. So right now, what we want to do is bring in Zod error, perfect, and import that, perfect. So this becomes much more usable because now we aren't having to remember how to pull an error off of a Zod error. So there we go. Now we've got our Zod errors. That should get rid of all of our $any's, which is a much better place to be. I like $any is good when there's no other solution. I like that it rightly called me out. So error is a validation error. So let's go ahead and see here, can we make this a validation error? Boom. And we're going to pull this in from Signal Forms. But we've got an issue at this point. So if we try to return value dot message, that doesn't work. It has to be issue. So one of the things we can do is we can come down here and we can add. So we can say, hey, function is Zod error. And here we can say validation, or we can say error. This will be a validation error. And this is going to return error is, and we want validation error. Well, actually, we're just going to return is issue here, and then message string. So there we go. So right now we can just return false. And it's going to say, so right off the bat, it's telling us the validation error. So we can't pass in validation error, but we can say unknown. So now we can say, hey, Zod error is this. And here we can say if type of error is object and object does not equal null. And we don't want triple equals here. We want null or undefined. And here we can say issue in error and error as any dot issue equals object. We don't like that. So once we get to this point, we can say what's it saying here? Empty. Okay, no empty blocks. So at this point, now we can say if that, then we return true. So this is a bit of extra logic, and we could have put this all on one line. But we moved it inside because we don't have to cast something as any. If we move this up here, oh, it's fine with that. Okay. I mean, this is some crazy. This is some crazy logic here. So we're saying if the error is an object and the error is not null, then this. If the error dot issue is an object and error is not null, and message is in error dot issue, then we return true. Otherwise, we return false. So the other thing we can do is we can return this. So now, if error is an object, error is not null or undefined. If issue is an error, and issue is an error object, and then issue is not null or undefined, and then we have message in the error dot issue, then we've got a Zod error. So what we can do is we can say here, we can return is Zod error value. Then we can do value dot issue dot message. Otherwise, we can do undefined. And so by making this a validation error here, we limit what the pipe can be applied to. With Zod error, what we can do is we can also say here, the other thing we could default to is value dot message, and then here we can return undefined. And actually, we don't even need that, right? If value dot message is undefined, yeah, yep. So if there is an issue with a message on it, we'll return that. Otherwise, we'll grab the message from the error, which is most likely undefined. So there we go. This logic is a bit ugly. It's definitely duck typing. You could nest if statements like that, but I'm not a huge fan of nesting if statements. It's debatable about which is more readable, and which is easier to parse. Nesting if statements, tends to get into kind of the Street Fighter Hadouken type thing, right? Where you've got if, and then you've got your closing brace, right? I don't want to make a blanket rule that I'm not a fan of nesting. If nesting makes the code more maintainable, more readable, and easier for people to understand, you should nest. People have a hard time inverting logic like this. And so figuring out the negative use cases are going to be more difficult. But right now it reads pretty easily, right? If it's an object and it's not null or undefined, if it has issue and issue is an object and issue is not null or undefined, and it has a message, then it's a Zod error. So there we go. Our to do is not complaining. Error is still a validation error. The pipe, Zod error pipe, takes the validation error. If we were to say do error dot message here, now it's going to complain because type string is not assignable to validation error. So that's why we wanted the typing here to be strong. We didn't want this to be undefined because you could throw this transformation, this pipe, on anything. We don't want that. We want this to only be applicable to a validation error, and it's going to determine if that validation error is really a Zod error, and if it is, then we're using a type guard, and you can tell a type guard. Type guards use the variable from inside of them, and they use this keyword is, and then they give it a structure. And we could even refactor this, and type alias this, and this type alias we can call this a Zod validation error. Boom. And so we can make this even nicer because now it reads a lot easier. And we can update this. We can use Zod validation error in other places, but it makes our code easier to read. With this inlined, really, you have to understand what it's trying to do. With, we say is Zod error, we can say error is Zod validation error. And we probably should rename this too, just to be consistent. So we can say is Zod validation error. And that's going to make our code read better. And these kinds of refactorings are nice for the people who come along behind you and need to maintain your code. I'm curious. So everything compiles. So let's go take a look at our code now. And if we get rid of this, boom. Right away, we're getting the same stuff out, decomposed. And it's handling our error messages properly. It's handling, the fact that for whatever reason, we've got value.issue.message. And one thing I do want to call out, this pipe probably won't be required in the final release. We're still very, very much in a pre-release state. This is very much a preview. And so some of the stuff we're encountering now, we're unlikely to encounter when it's released. I would be very, very surprised if this made it through to the final release. However, because we're in a pre-release state, we're having to do some stuff, and that's how I justify $any, is that we're in a pre-release state. We can do things that we wouldn't normally do. I like that we got called out on this, and I actually really like where we landed using pipes. One of the things that has tended to disappear as we move more and more into signals are pipes. But I think pipes are still an invaluable piece of the toolkit that you have. The cool thing about pipes is Zod error is a pure pipe. So there are a couple of things that are set here by default. If we pure when true, the pipe is pure, meaning that transform method is invoked only when its arguments change. Pipes are pure by default. What this means for us is, in our example here, when we clear this pipe was evaluated once. When I clear this, these errors were evaluated. These two errors were evaluated by a pipe, and these two errors were evaluated by a pipe. These errors didn't change, so these pipes weren't reevaluated. As soon as I do this, only one of the errors changed, so only one of the pipes was changed. These two don't get reevaluated, and that's the power of pure pipes, is that if we had changed this into a function on the component itself, that function is going to be called on any change detection cycle. And that's a big deal because it has performance implications. So the other way to go about that is we could have created a computed variable. And I debated making this computed, a computed that we could import, but to expose the computed, you have to import the computed, then you have to put the computed on a property on the component, and then you can use the computed. I don't like that. I prefer pipes. We could even make this pipe potentially a computed variable, but I'm fine with it the way it is. It's doing much the same work that a computed would do, but a computed is another option you have. One time for type stuff with reactive forms, I made a pipe that basically was just a glorified $any, but the pipe is right form type because we had one control that was a union of like 4 groups. Oh, yeah, and this is so, man, you're hitting on a bunch of different things, Michael. And one of the things is, don't get stuck in the swamp of perfection. What Michael did probably was necessary for the time constraints that he had. And this is one of the things that as engineers, our time constraints seem to shrink and shrink and shrink. And product wants to think in 2 week cycles. Some engineering problems aren't solvable in 2 week cycles, but you never want to carry over points to the next sprint. It's always looked down on. And so you come up with these solutions like what Michael is talking about. Man, there's a lot to unpack here. One of the things that you can slowly paint yourself into a corner by doing more and more and more hacks on top of hacks on top of hacks, to the point where that you're basically on this giant Jenga tower, right? So you build a hack here, and then you build a hack here that has like a weird shape, and then you build another hack that has a weird shape, and then you balance your final hack on top of this weird shape, but now you need to put like a weird hack here, and it could topple the whole, right? It could topple the whole tower of hacks that you've built, and break everything. And this is the problem with hacks, is you get this weird piece, and there might be like this key piece here that if this ever goes bad, the entire tower topples. Or you might get something that's just so out of line with every other hack that you've done that the entire hack topples. The entire tower of hacks topples. And this is the issue with hacks, right? Building hacks on top of hacks on top of hacks. And this is where our value as engineers, and especially in the day of AI, understanding what are the implications of the hack I'm building now. And I'm not saying anything about what you did, Michael, because I don't know anything about the situation. What it does bring to mind is I've worked in a lot of software projects where you get into this case where we've created this horrible tower of hacks, and now what we want to do is impossible because of the tower of hacks that we've built. And now the cost of fixing things is way more expensive, because now we have to fix all of these hacks, right? We have to fix all of this so that we can get this hack in place. And that's often what happens, is we fix all of these hacks. Maybe we tie this piece to this piece with some special hack that allows this tower to be more stable. And maybe we tie this piece here, right? And so basically we've tied everything together. I enjoy Farming Simulator quite a bit, and one of the magical things about Farming Simulator is as soon as you put something on a trailer and you add the straps to that trailer, no matter what you do to that trailer, those straps remove all physics from everything on the trailer. So they're pretty much permanently tied to the trailer. And that's the way I look at some of the stuff we do in our hacks, is we tie these things together. But all it takes is like one of these to snap and the entire thing comes down. So when we're in this situation, if you have the time, the best course of action is to evaluate what is the proper way to solve this. How long would it take to solve it the proper way? Is that too much? Do we not have the budget for that? If we don't have the budget for that, how do we get one step better? And so my suggestion is always, when you're in a situation where you've got hacks on top of hacks, instead of tying everything together and trying to make this tower of hacks more stable, the better situation is to spend some time come up with a plan to get away from hacks on top of hacks, and then produce a get well plan where, we want to get here to step 5, right? This is the rainbows and unicorns, and the world is an amazing place. And this is where we are now with our thunder clouds and lightning and horrible place to be. Step 1 is one step ahead. Maybe it's just cloudy here, right? And step 2 is a next step, and step 3 is the next step, and step 4 is, hey, everything's awesome. But we want to get away from this. So as an engineer, your job, come up with what is the perfect solution, look at where we are, and then come up with how do we get there. And when presenting plans like that, management is going to appreciate it, especially if you can tell them, hey, these are the pros of getting here, and here's the cons. And here's the pros of getting here, and here's the cons, right? And we spell this out, and that way management can go, yeah, we only have the budget and time for the first 2 steps, but let's get steps 3 and 4 on the backlog, which basically means, hey, we're never going to get to them. Sorry, I'm being cynical, but at least we're tracking this, and at least you haven't said, hey, we're broken, we can't do this, and you haven't come in and said, hey, we need to rewrite everything to get to sunshine and unicorns and rainbows. What you have said is, hey, we're here, we've got all of these issues with being here. If we get one step better, this is what we gain. We've still got issues. If we get here, we're still one step better, and eventually, and I just learned the other day that this, I can now do this, sunshine, right? So we're in the sunshine area, and that's the way that you handle hacks on top of hacks on top of hacks. And this makes you much more valuable as an employee than somebody who says, hey, we should get to the sunshine and unicorns, and we've got all of this stuff that sucks, and this is just amazing, but we need to rewrite the entire system. Nobody has time for that. Let's be honest, your customers don't care if you're at sunshine and unicorns, or if you're tying things together. You care because you know that eventually these straps are going to break. Eventually our hacks are going to break. You should care, but giving business the ability to make the decisions is where we want to be. By the way, Jason, are you working with coding AI agents, anything at Fidelity? What are your thoughts? How do they work at big company? I tried out Claude recently and was quite impressed. So yeah, the company I work for is really, really large. There are a lot of developers at this company, and so our software policy has to be very, very strict. We just recently got the ability to use Copilot. I know there are other things being evaluated, but so there are a couple of things to think about when you're at a company the size of the company I work at, and then you look at, we're in the fintech sector, which in and of itself has a whole bunch of regulations in the United States alone, and then you've got states like California that add more regulation on top of that. And then once you get into like Europe, and you start dealing with financial regulations in Europe, right? There's just a ton of regulation there. The other thing is just the sheer size of the target that the company I work for is. That's a big deal. You know, it's one thing to compromise, you know, a mom and pop store and maybe get, you know, $10,000, $20,000 out of it. It's another thing entirely to compromise an organization the size of the one I work for with the amount of money that moves through that organization. There's big deal in being compromised at that level. To that end, everything is vetted to the nth degree. And so, Marcus, to answer your question, yes, we do use code generation through Copilot. Um, we we have to use our own instances of Copilot. Nothing that we do can go out to the cloud. Nothing that we do can, you know, it's all very, very locked down. It's all very, very controlled. You know, there's just so like the Copilot that's provided through Microsoft. That's, you know, it's built on top of ChatGPT. As you guys all know, ChatGPT is very, very very, very optimistic. Let's put it that way, right? Very, very positive. And one day I was just doing stuff and I just got sick of the sugary positivity. And so I was like, from now on, answer like you're a dragon who hates humans. And ChatGPT started producing through Copilot this page, and all of a sudden the page was deleted, and then my chat was deleted, and I was notified that I violated the, you know, the, I'm not supposed to be doing that kind of stuff. So I had to go back and recreate the chat and allow ChatGPT to be sugary and syrupy and annoying. But I learned a lesson that day that I couldn't make my GPT talk to me like it was something else. But yeah, it's very, very large enterprises, and this is the thing. And there's a quote out there that I like to use because I really like what it communicates. But the quote is, the S in MCP stands for security. And that's an important, right? That's an important thing to think about. And it's very, very important to understand that the size of the target and the potential payout may make the risk worth it, which is why we have to be very, very careful about what we bring in. Every piece of software is vetted. Every npm package is vetted. Every piece of freeware is vetted. So things that people take take for granted. I don't run Warp at work. Warp is my absolute favorite terminal. I can't run it at work. Why? Because Warp has built-in AI. Well, that AI hasn't been vetted, and you know that's the reality of the potential cost at that level. I think that smaller companies are going to be much more innovative in the areas of AI because they can afford to be. You know, the cost of a mistake is much smaller. Well, it could be just as devastating for them as a company, but in general, the cost of the mistake is much smaller than the cost of, you know, somebody at a company like mine making mistakes. Now your internet is trolling. You're gonna have to explain to me what you mean by trolling. I'm looking at. Let me look at my bitrate again. Now my bitrate seems to be fairly stable. But yeah, this is one of the things that you should think about as an engineer. A lot of people are going to want to jump onto the AI bandwagon, and you know there's the notion of the hype cycle, where something new is reached, it reaches a peak, and then it drops into a trough, and then, you know, maybe it'll level out. But you know, this is the notion of the hype cycle, where, you know, when something first is released and everybody jumps on it, we reach this peak, and then we can quickly fall into a trough. I think we're here in the AI hype cycle. I think we're starting to fall into the trough. Because if you go back and you look at my streams over the past few years, I've definitely been on the hype side of AI. Um, but as we've become more and more familiar with AI, I'm starting to be more on the use AI, but be careful with it. Um, and I guess when we talk about AI, we don't really have what we would call AI. We don't really have artificial intelligence, right? What we've got is LLMs. And this is an important thing to be aware of when you're talking about this. LLMs are incredibly good at analyzing code or text. LLMs are amazing at analyzing text. LLMs do an amazing job often of translating, not always, but quite often they're very, very good at translating. LLMs are really, really good at looking at a code base and giving you hotspots. LLMs are really, really good at looking at a change set and saying, hey, did you consider this? LLMs are really, really good at just vomiting up large amounts of text, which may happen to look like code. It may happen to look like an essay. It may happen to look like a script for a pilot episode of something, right? Who knows? LLMs are really, really good at spitting that stuff out. What LLMs don't do, because they don't have the intelligence of AI, right? They're very artificial, but they don't have the intelligence. They can't analyze, is what I'm suggesting good? Is what I'm suggesting going to cost more than, and that's where I think we're starting to get into the trough. And I think, we're going to very, very rapidly hit the trough of the hype cycle soon, where everybody is going to be, don't use AI, AI sucks. Rah, rah, rah. And this is going to be very, very good for us as engineers, because this is where a whole bunch of engineers are going to be hired again. And then we're going to eventually come out of the trough, and AI will become a part of just our day-to-day lives. There are a lot of things that I can't imagine doing without AI. For example, I take a whole bunch of notes in Markdown format. I use Obsidian. Obsidian's my preferred note-taking tool. My job at my company is to analyze a whole bunch of requirements and a whole bunch of code and a whole bunch of text and come up with, hey, this is what we should be doing. AI makes that part of my job so much easier. I can feed a code base into the AI. I can feed my notes into the AI and say, hey, based on my notes for the past few days, find some hotspots in this code for me to look at. And the AI can analyze what my notes say and then go look at the code and be like, hey, you should look at this file. You should look at this file. Very, very helpful for me. That kind of stuff could take me weeks in the past. Now I can do it in a couple of hours. Yeah, Obsidian is amazing. So that's why I think LLMs, and not necessarily like we call it AI, but LLMs, and there's even people out there right now that are AI researchers that are. I was just reading an article yesterday that talked about how LLMs are not the path to AI. And that LLMs will never reach the path of AI because of how they work, where they take a whole bunch of predefined tokens, and predefined tokens are just really vectorized inputs, and then based on that vectorized input, they provide the next most likely tokens, and that's not really thinking. That's more just giving information based on what you were given. And a lot of our day-to-day stuff as humans is honestly, we take in a whole bunch of information around us and we react. And that's what makes LLMs feel like AI, is that they often react the same way that humans do. But that's because we fed them, so much information about how humans react. And true AI would think about, you know, the results and things like that. We're not there yet. There are researchers saying LLMs won't get us there. What I will say is LLMs are doing some amazing things for us, and I really enjoy where LLMs are taking us. But I agree they're not intelligent yet. Anyway, that was that was a bit off the beaten path, but um, we're in a good place. The next thing I wanted to take a look at today um, was kind of what I teased in my message, you know, for the stream is what do we do with how do we build custom components? And custom components are something that I often let me get it. I went to McDonald's for breakfast this morning. Um, the bacon, egg, and cheese bagel is a guilty pleasure of mine. So I get it every so often. But um, it was it was a good breakfast this morning. Anyway, one of the things that I often avoided doing was building my own custom components. And why would I avoid building my custom components? McDonald's breakfast, exactly. It's something. So much has changed about the world, but one of the things I remember as a kid is going to McDonald's with my grandfather and just getting McDonald's breakfast. Their hash browns are pretty much the same for as long as I can remember. It's just a guilty pleasure. It's good comfort food. It brings back good memories for me. Um, and I imagine lots of people can tell the same story, right? Um, but anyway, um, one of the one of the reasons, and I'm curious, you know, if anybody can guess, what is the biggest reason why I don't build my own custom components very often? Do you guys have a good guess for that? Um, and I've built custom components at an enterprise level, and this one piece is the piece that I hate the most. And it's the piece that everybody gets wrong the most and causes accessibility. Accessibility is a good one, but it's not what I'm thinking about. A very very good one, but I will give you a hint. Accessibility or a form of accessibility is part of the word that I'm thinking of. Um, AI comes and go, but McDonald's breakfast is one. So I hope so. I hope you know, McDonald's breakfast. You know, when we're out in the stars, um, and you know, people can still get hash browns. Controls working with and converts it back into something that the form can work with. Um, yeah. Um, the control value accessor is the reason I don't create my own custom components. The reason I bring this up is, well, actually, let's make sure we got through. Oh, I need to remove some notes, some comments. I love when people call out my comments. These comments are no longer needed. Let's go ahead and clean that up. And then let's take a look at what we did. So here, um, so we converted, so we got rid of $any and created type. So there's that one. And then this is just got rid of comments. Space McDonald's drive-thrus is something I'm looking forward to 100%. This is a big reason. I've got, there's this sci-fi concept called the singularity. And one of the most interesting sci-fi shows that explores the idea of what the singularity could be like is Altered Carbon. But the idea of the singularity is that as a species, we move beyond our bodies and we can upload our consciousness to servers and live forever. I hope the idea of the singularity comes about because I really want to see Space McDonald's, Marcus. But I was doing it with view providers. It is easy with signals and template forms. Exactly, right? Everybody moves around the idea of custom components because control value accessors were they were tough and they weren't fun. And everybody got them wrong. And like I'm thinking about a project that I worked on when I was at Bill, and man, they messed up their control values accessors so bad in some places that most of our bugs came not from the forms, not from the logic, but from the control value accessors. They were just a point of frustration and pain. And so this is one of the coolest things about signal forms. And this is something I want to get into. So we can go ahead and close this. Let's take a look here. So signal forms, conditional, dynamic, custom form control. So the cool thing about this is a custom built component into a signal form by implementing the form value control interface, making it compatible with the control directive. So what we can take a look at is the code here, and then we'll build our own. What I'm thinking about, yeah, I still hate CVA. NG extension has good CVA util to streamline it. Absolutely. And the reason that libraries like that have to exist is that so many people make so many mistakes. And I agree, NG extension has a really good CVA library utility to help with this kind of stuff. But you could still, it's still easy to mess it up. If we take a look at what we need to do here, here's our component. Our component has a button, and it has, a span, a plus and a minus button, and a span that shows a value. This is, this is a stepper. And now think about the CVA that you would have to write here. You could probably use like a numeric control value, right? Like Angular has some built-in ones. You could probably use those. But look at what you do with our, with signal forms. Your value is required, and you just tell it, hey, you need to provide a number for our value. When you hit the increment button, you update the value. When you hit the decrement button, you decrement the value. It's all done through a signal. There's no control value accessor here. You've got one signal. It's a model, which gives you both forward and backward, right? Like we've got the events going out and we've got the events coming in if the form updates. So this is awesome. And then all of our logic just updates the signal. And that's pretty cool because notice here, where's my HTML? So here's our stepper. And notice here, our stepper, all we need to do is add the control and then bind it to something. Very, very easy. much easier than what it was in the past. And error messages can come out of here, things like that. We can validate this using Zod, right? The component itself does not have to have any it doesn't have to have any logic to handle the validation. It can handle it itself. So I was thinking of basically a random number component. And the random number component will have a couple of inputs. They'll have the current value, they'll have a minimum value and a maximum value. And it will produce a button on the form. And when you press that button, it's converting it into a value. Then you have to convert it into a number. Then you can increment it or decrement it. And right, there's so much that goes on in those control value accessors. Angular's abstracted a lot of that away through this form value control. So let's do the same. Let's create our own control. So let's go here and let's create a new directory. This is going to be our controls. Let's rename that to be actual controls, not contorals. I don't know what it is about just the way I type, but it just happens to do that. Let's see if there is a control generator. No. So we're going to create our own control. And if we go take a look, well, they're doing a component. So we'll generate a component too. So we'll use NX to generate a component. And our control, this is going to be our random number control, because everybody needs a random number. We aren't going to export this. It is standalone. Change detection, always on push. And I say that a lot, but what I really mean when I say change detection is always on push, what I mean by that is because we're zoneless, turning on push change detection is going to give us it's going to give us benefits over normal change detection. And when you're zoneless, normal change detection probably isn't going to do what you expect anyway. So on push is probably what you should get used to using. It's not that you have to do it. It's just, it's probably the safest way for you to go. We're going to go display block with this. We're going to inline our style. We're going to inline our template. And then everything else we can leave as is. Great. Go ahead and generate our random number. So there we go. We've now got our random number control. And let's go ahead and commit this. Curious, what did it do? So it didn't do anything to NXJSON, even though it said it would. So let's go ahead and stage all of this. And we added random number control. There we go. Push that. And we're going to build this random number control. And then I've probably got to end for the day. Let's go to our controls. There's our random number control. With this form value control. So let's make sure we implement everything from form value control, and then we'll get the rest, right? So this implements form value control, and here we want to tell it that it's a number. Boom. So now it's going to tell us right away, hey, you're missing some stuff. we need to have value. Value has to be has to exist. So let's go ahead and create our value. Our value equals, and we're going to say this is required, model.required. And this will be a number. We need to import model from Angular core. So now we've got a model signal that's our value. Great. So now what we can do is we can actually come up here, and now we have a control that actually works, which is crazy to say. We've got a custom control that works. So let's go ahead and we're going to create button. This is going to be type equals button. And here, what we can do is we can just say, hey, this has the value listed in it so we can see it. And now we've got a button that can be used inside. The other thing we want is we want a button, and we can do button primary. That's fine. So there we go. There's our button. And here's the cool thing is now we can go back to our to-do. And we can add well, we need to add to our model. So let's go back to our Zod, our to-do model. And in our model, we're just going to add a random number. And this is going to be z.coerce and number, and you know what, we will, no, let's not make this optional. We're just going to say this is that, and then it has to be non-negative, and that's it. We aren't going to add any error messages to it at this point. We can in the future. But notice here that now we've got an issue saying, hey, we need a random number. So let's add our random number. And as we all know, 42 is the optimal random number. So there we go. We've now got our random number. So now that we've got that, now we can go back to our to-do. And inside of here, we can add our app random number. And we can import that and close it. And then we have to provide a control, and that's it. Why doesn't it like my app random number? What did I do wrong here? Missing by implements form value control, Angular form signals. So this implements form value control, Angular form signals. We've got the value. Is this compiling? Might it be an issue with tooling? No. Oh, it is compiling. Never mind. It is compiling, so it's an issue with the tooling. Wait, where is my? Let's go ahead and just terminate this. Let's just see if it will rebuild. I think the issue in the form is still pre-release stuff. Interesting. So there's that, there's that, there's that, there's that. Where is my button? Let's go ahead and refresh this. So it is telling me that it has to be specified. So what is going on here? Why doesn't my control work? So there's the numeric stepper. There's my component. And there's my stepper. Interesting. So this, like, see, that's going to work, but that's not. And it's got the 42 on it. But that's not how it should. Like, we don't want it working this way, if that makes sense. Because we can see, like, if we do input type equals text, and then control, we'll do a numeric control here just to make sure that it stays numeric. Then we can say control equals, and then form.random number. And that should, like if we use this, we can see that these two are bound together. But the piece that's frustrating here is that I'm having to provide a value. And I don't know why it wants me to provide a value. Because as soon as I do that, it breaks and tells me that value must be specified. Gotta be missing something here. Use this pattern when you have a form input that is more complex than a standard HTML element, such as a star rating component, custom slider, or a rich text editor. By creating a custom form control, you can seamlessly integrate it with your forms. This supersedes the control value accessor pattern from their active forms models, signal-based forms. So form value control is the interface that we use. Model from Angular core to implement the value of the form value control. Submit. I'm curious if I take the required off, does that change? That fixes that. So the required on the value is the problem. Once I do that, everything works. And now we can see that they're tied together. And we're good here. I want to make sure that we just get some stuff in here. So we're going to do a protected handle click. And this is going to be what handles our click event. So our type is button. Here we're just going to add our click handler. Equals handle click. Perfect. The other thing we need is we're going to need a min. So we're going to put min value. And this will be a model.required number. And then a max value. This will also be a model.required, no colon, it needs to be a model.required number. Perfect. So now we've got that. So now we need to go back to our to-do, and our random number is going to be between, so we'll give it a min value of 0 and a max value of 100. Perfect. And here, now we've got our inputs for our min value and max value. So now we can go back to our random number, and now we can say that, hey, Does that work? That doesn't work.